In fairness, this irregular channel of diplomacy, it's not as outlandish as it could be. Is that correct?
It's not as outlandish as it could be.
It might be irregular, but it's certainly not outlandish.
There's a phrase that pays. That was one argument the Republican counsel tried to make in that effort to defend the president from impeachment. You can judge its effectiveness for yourself. With us tonight to talk about all things political, the veteran journalist Jason Johnson, politics editor at The Root, and Rick Wilson, Republican strategist, soon to be following up on his first book, Everything Trump Touches Dies, with his new work, Running Against the Devil, due out in early 2020. Gentlemen, welcome to you both. Rick, the president said tonight Republicans have never been more united. Is that what you saw watching the hearing yesterday?
Well, look, I think that what I saw watching the hearing yesterday was Republicans who were in a state of edgy panic, and they were trying to talk faster and louder in hopes of trying to elide past the fact that those two witnesses sat there and laid out a timeline, a calendar, additional facts, additional witnesses. This was not a good day for those folks. And no matter how many times, Jimbo Baggins gets up there and dances around like a crazy little leprechaun, it's not going to shake the fact that the facts are against Donald Trump, and the timeline is against Donald Trump, and the witnesses are against Donald Trump. And that was day one. They had a bad day on day one. I don't think it's going to get much better as we go forward.
Jason, the Democrats, with day one in the books, we have learned they can schedule witnesses and conduct questioning.
Yes.
When will you have confirmation that they have indeed found the right messaging, that with all we have lived through with Mueller, 400-plus pages, this is the story to tell? This is the story people can understand, because at the heart of it is a phone call.
So we're going to find over the next couple of days if Nancy Pelosi and Adam Schiff are Joe Torre, if they're good managers, if they can set up the lineup properly with the witnesses. And I think they did a good job. Look, this first day, you had two people who, as you said, they set the timeline. They were very clear. They weren't flustered. They didn't allow Jim Jordan or anybody else to ask them any sort of strange questions that got them off the line. And I think the Republicans, they weren't unified. They didn't seem to have a coherent strategy other than, do you follow all the conspiracy theories that we know about on Reddit? So I think the Democrats did a very, very good job. This is not going to be a knockout punch situation. That's not what's going to happen. What they need to do is not screw up and lay out the story, because the American public already seems to be in favor of impeachment. They just don't want to blow that sort of enthusiasm.
But let me follow up on that. Do you think this hearsay line of argument is catching on, and do you think it has a time limit on it?
I don't think hearsay works because you've got too many people talking about the same story, right? It doesn't look, everybody out there who's watching this, the people who are at home, my grandmother, grandparents, everything else like that, they've watched Law and Order. They know the difference between hearsay and what seems like a credible witness. And these people all come across as credible until someone blows up, until someone has that Sam Waterston moment where they get angry on the stage. Everyone watching this right now is when they say, well, these people seem credible. We've been hearing about this story. And so far, the Republicans haven't given us an alternative story to think that this impeachment doesn't make sense. And that's really the weakness I saw on Tuesday.
Rick, I have something for you. This is Nikki Haley tonight on CNN on the topic of Rudy Giuliani.
Was it appropriate, based on everything you experienced in the world of diplomacy, for Rudy Giuliani, the president's personal lawyer, someone who had no security clearances, to be engaged in what's being described as this shadow diplomacy?
During my time at the United Nations, I never saw Rudy engaged in that way. It is best practice if you have a special envoy to handle certain areas, and we do that all the time. I think they should have named him the special envoy so that everyone within the administration knew what his role was.
So instead of former mayor of New York, special envoy Rudy Giuliani, Rick, is that the rosiest possible reading of the situation Rudy is in? Question two, what is going on, do you think, with Nikki Haley?
You know, I think Nikki's missing one of those profound rules in life. The rats are supposed to jump off of the sinking ship rather than onto the sinking ship. And so tonight she gambled more of her credibility away by essentially putting her arms around Rudy Giuliani, a guy who is already being dragged out behind the barn because they're done with him. The Trump people are trying to cut him loose. The Republicans in Congress are going to try to blame this whole thing on Rudy when it comes down to it. You know, that's their last-ditch scenario. And so now she's basically praising Rudy at a moment where his stock has fallen so far with Trump personally and with the Trump world that, you know, it's only a matter of time before he was just a coffee boy, a volunteer. We barely knew him, Rudy who.
Jason, Yovanovitch tomorrow. Give us a bit of a preview. We tried to point out at the top of the broadcast, we recall ambassadors all the time.
Right.
Rarely do they say they feel threatened in their personal lives. Rarely does one of the locals say to them, watch your back.
Right. When she's saying, I felt threatened, I don't even know why the president was talking about me. This is going to be the emotional punch. We got the story first. Now we're hearing people felt threatened. People felt concerned. People in the country, in the Ukraine, were like, we don't even know what's going on, what's dangerous here. And this is where something like Rudy Giuliani and all these other individuals come into play. Look, it doesn't matter if he was named special envoy. You don't put your ankle breaker on staff, right? Like, so everyone knew that Trump had a lot of people operating in these sort of irregular channels. And she speaks to how those irregular channels made regular, long-term service people feel uncomfortable. And that's going to be the story that Americans take with them over the weekend.
Both of these gentlemen have agreed to stay with us over this break. Coming up, however, a New England Democrat born in Chicago who works at Mitt Romney's old company.